Greetings, I'm Bairnt and welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop. I'm new to the channel and I want to give you a top 10 video series, but I'm not going to do it on games of 2019. I'm actually been a channel for almost 2 years now and I've got a lot of videos over there, and I'm going to do my top 10 games that I have recorded on my channel. And I'm going to tell you things I liked about each of them and things I didn't like about each of them. And you can decide if those are games you might want to check out in the future. So the ones that are not going to be part of that list are going to be any Kickstarter previews I've done on that channel. Frankly, I don't know what those games are going to be like yet, since they haven't hit retail or even shipped through Kickstarter. So if you're excited to see what are my top 10 favorite games that I've filmed, then I need you to meet me at the co-op shop. Number 10 on this list is Aliens by Leading Edge Games. If you can't tell by the box, this has seen many a playthrough. This game is a great representation of the movie. You're going to take the colonial marines and the people that went with them, such as Burke and Ripley, down to LV-426 to try to find out what happened to the colonists. And of course, you're going to be playing through the epic moments that happen in the movie, like the reactor room and the air ducts and the operations. And of course, you're going to fight the Queen at the end. There's so many awesome parts of this game that make it feel so much like the movie. Now, one thing I do like about this game is it's fast and fun. This is just a simple D10 system where you're going to consult certain tables, and each Marine has a certain weapon that they're going to be using. Also, the aliens are randomly going to be placed in most of the scenarios, so you never know what alien is going to be where and who could possibly be jumped by these aliens, such as Dietrich in the movie. Of course, another thing I love about this game is the theme. Aliens is a wonderful sci-fi universe. It's probably my favorite one of all time. So having a game that really embraces the movie itself is going to be an auto win for me. Being able to recreate the reactor room scene, hopefully getting Drake out, or going through the air ducts and operations and watching Burke slam the door behind you makes me want to hate him even more. So it's these epic moments and the theme of the game that really make it shine. Another thing I enjoy about the game is, since it has such an easy system, there are a lot of different special rules that are incorporated not only in the base game, but also the expansions. After you get through the reactor room, maybe Pharaoh and Spunkmeyer are able to beat that alien on the dropship, giving you the full arsenal that the Marines have to go down into the Queen's lair and either take her out or even rescue their comrades that were taken during that whole reactor room scene. So these other ways of making the game come alive add so much more depth to this game. There's even ammunition rules. Just like when Vasquez ran out of ammo while going through the air ducts, you might have to switch to a pistol, which is definitely not going to be as good. So these are some of the great things about this game. Now, some of the things I'm not a big fan of is this is a very luck-based game. In certain scenarios, these aliens could really just jump out of the wall and take your entire team down and could leave you pretty demoralized. But that also has to do a lot with the theme. So if you're not really into luck, you might not like it. Also, there's not really a lot of tactic. It's really just run to the exit as fast as you can. Just kind of like in the movie, get out of there. That's really all this game is about. So if you're looking for a game where you tactically want to put people in certain places to try to outwit an AI, this really might not be how this game is going to be. Also, the biggest one is availability. Of course, this game was made back in the 80s. I don't even think Leading Edge Games is around anymore. It might have gotten absorbed by another company, but this game is impossible to find unless you can get it on the secondary market. Of course, there are some Flash player versions of this game, but since I own the actual copy, I haven't really been out looking for those. So that's Aliens by Leading Edge Games, coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is Folklore, The Affliction by Greenbrier Games. This is a dark fantasy game set in kind of a gothic world. It's a really challenging game and has a fantastic story that has created more of a living RPG that you can play inside a box. It even brings back all the dice that you might remember from your D&D games. 20s, 10s, 12s, 4s, it's all there, and you're going to be using all these throughout the game. Evil has swept over this land, and it's your job to try to figure out a way to combat this evil with the characters that you choose to play. One of this game's main draws is its story, set in this gothic world with like cultists and vampires and werewolves all coming after your adventurers. The story choices you can make in this game will have an impact in how the actual story progresses as you play through each chapter. Doing certain things in town may give you an advantage in some of the fights coming up, or a disadvantage, and you won't find out until it gets to the moment in the story where it asks if you have made one of those two choices, and then you look across from the table at your friends and go, oh no, we shouldn't have done that. Also, when you decide to create a character, as you make them, you can decide what path you want these characters to go on. So you could replay this game as the same character, but choosing a different path and gaining new skills and abilities, which make that character unique in its own way. Another thing I like about this game is the living world that you're playing inside of. You're going to be getting a mission, and that mission is going to get you through the chapter. But to get there, you have to take these roads or off-roads, and you're going to come across different events that are going to bring this world alive. On top of that, this game has fantastic miniatures that you're going to see on the board itself when you actually go into the fights. This game even implements a skirmish-type mechanic, which means you're not going to have to fight every single battle on these little battle boards. You can actually go through a quick skirmish that may have taken place in a town or on the road and doesn't bog down the story, but still brings the world of Folklore to life and creates this absolutely amazing living world. A couple things I didn't like about this game is combat. Combat is done with a D100 system to see if you hit the monster, and then you're going to roll for your damage based on your weapons. Now, at certain points during combat, I've found that this basically just comes down to who can roll higher and who can do the most damage. The tactics and the maneuverability in the game aren't really there. Also, character abilities, you get a certain amount of points, mostly 5 power points at the beginning, and you only get a certain amount of abilities. And I found that I want to save these power points and these abilities until I find the main boss. So not being able to exploit the characteristics of my character until the main fight kind of was a little disappointing, and I was hoping I could use more abilities to bring my fighter alive during other combats instead of just against the boss of each chapter. Another negative that people might have is that this game is hard. It's pretty tough to get through this game. Not only are the missions themselves kind of difficult, everything that happens around you in the world can be difficult. You're going to be drawing these different cards and having to resolve them. And in certain cards, you may lose a character just walking down the road. So at certain points in this game, I feel that when you go to develop characters, it always feels like somebody has to be the exorcist, which is the healer in the game. If you don't have that healer, this game becomes exponentially more difficult because money is hard to find, and being able to keep your characters alive in combat is so crucial. The living world of Folklore set in the dark fantasy comes in at number 9. And coming in at number 8 is the game that started my channel. This is Myth by Megacon Games, which really isn't around anymore. Now it's owned by Ulysses Spiel. I hope I pronounced that right. Myth is a unique dungeon crawler that has a tile-based system where you're going to draw quests and try to complete them. As the game has expanded, they've kind of moved away from the quests and introduced some modules which really make the game shine. In this game, you're going to be taking characters through kind of this dungeon or these modules, and the characters you choose all have unique card decks that you're going to be playing to be able to perform actions. As you perform these actions, the darkness meter is going to rise based on how many or how powerful the actions you are doing are. And after this darkness meter reaches a certain point, that's when the monsters activate. So it's not a turn-by-turn basis. It's a turn until the meter fills, then the monsters react. So it's a unique system that I haven't seen in too many other games. It's a fully cooperative game, and you're able to talk and react to each other and help each other through all these different modules and adventures. If you ever get a chance to try Myth, I really recommend it. It's such a unique game and has a really cool feel. Now, as I said earlier, some of the things I like is I really like the characters. They're all so diverse and they have such interesting card decks. And as you go through some of the modules, you're going to be able to expand these card decks and add more powerful and different abilities, eventually having to decide what path you're going to take your certain character down. For example, the Acolyte could remain on the light side and become way more powerful in healing and holy abilities, or he could turn more towards the darker path and be able to conjure up things from the dead and have them fight for him. So there's so many different ways that these characters can develop as the game progresses. As this game has expanded, they've moved out of this questing system. It's still there if you want to do it. The game was originally designed where you would put a tile down, you would draw a quest, and then work on that quest on the tile and move to another tile to work on another quest. There is a new system called the modules, and on my channel I actually do the Stone of Life module if you want to see how that works. This is the way I love to play Myth, and they've actually added a whole paper component now that has a whole bunch of set modules. which really helps the game gain structure. And that was something that was really lacking with just that quest system. Also, the artwork is fantastic. The tiles, the cards, everything about this game, when it comes to the art, it is out of the park. I love the way that everything is represented. And of course, this is a miniatures based game, and the miniatures are fantastic as well. They're really a cool spin on the whole dungeon crawl type feel. There's actually a boss that's carried around by 4 little skeletons that has 2 giant swords coming out of it. It's actually a really cool looking model. Now, of course, Myth does have a few problems. One of them I've noticed is you can become a little bit more overpowered and the minions start becoming less dangerous and more of a nuisance. So if you're trying to get through a module and you get to a point where you're in a battle with a bunch of minions and you guys are really powerful, it's almost kind of slows down the game. You kind of wish you'd just be able to forget it and move on to the boss itself. But of course, you can combat this by at least removing some of your gear and making yourself a little bit less powerful and making the battles actually more challenging. The other thing that could be a challenge in this game is, of course, if you only have the base box, there's really not a lot you can do with that base box. You really have to try to find an all-in pledge that has everything that this game has to offer in order to really experience Myth. If you just have that base box, you're really not going to be experiencing or even probably having a good time with Myth. You need to get everything they have in order to enjoy the game. And I touched on this before. I wasn't a big fan of the quest system. I'd like to have a little bit more structure in my dungeon crawls as opposed to just put a tile down, grab a card, do it, and move on to another card, have a great time enjoying the game. I like to have that structure where I know there's a beginning and an end. Of course, the cool thing about the tile system is that it's not going to take up a huge amount of table space because once you move off a tile, it disappears. So you're not having to set up this huge dungeon across the entire table. It can have a more compact footprint and allows everybody to kind of get into the action together. And there you have it, Myth at number 8. Coming in at number 7, we have Fallen Lands, a post-apocalyptic board game by Fallen Dominion. Now, this game takes place in a post-apocalyptic America where you're going to be in charge of a civilization and your goal is to become the most prestigious, have the most population of all the different civilizations. To accomplish this goal, you're going to set out with a group of survivors and they're going to be taking on different encounters, missions, and also epic quests that you're going to have to complete to gain this reputation or population. Along the way, you're going to be picking up different items, weapons, and vehicles, which are going to make your characters more powerful, giving them a better chance at succeeding at all the different missions and encounters along the way. Now, the unique thing about this game is their implementation of skill checks. You're going to be doing skill checks to see if you succeed at all the different things that come in front of your characters. So say you find a band of mercenaries. They're going to have you make a skill check against fighting and maybe survival. So you're going to look at your different characters, roll different dice, and hopefully get above the amount of skill checks successes that you need. If you don't, you have to take the failure consequence, which is usually pretty bad, but if you succeed, that's how you're going to gain your reputation and population. And if you can get to the max points before anybody else, you win the game. I know this sounds like a very competitive game, and yes, the base game is competitive, but the expansion adds a solo variant. I've played this game both ways and I've enjoyed it both ways, competitive and solo. This game is an absolute blast to play. There's a lot of fun moments that you're going to be able to remember from years to come, and the amount of replayability is out of this world. It's one of the things I really like about this game. If you look at the amount of cardboard that is in this game, the cards themselves tower in the thousands. There are so many different things that could come across your group that you will never play the same game twice. And if you are a solo gamer, there are different variants. You can play just for points. You can actually play against an AI-controlled opponents. This game has multiple ways to play solo. Those are just a couple of the things I really like about this game. The last thing I've already mentioned, it's skill checks. The skill check system in this is really unique and it's so much fun. You're going to roll all your dice, you're going to compare them to your characters, and depending on the gear and equipment or weapons you have given them, you're going to hopefully get even more successes than you need, which could increase your bounty that you get from an encounter by tenfold. It's so much fun to watch people fail and succeed at these skill checks. It's really the meat of the game and it's a really, really good system. Now, of course, the one drawback to this game is it's not co-op. There is no co-op variant, but I can totally understand why. You're trying to become the best civilization when you're playing either solo or competitive. So there's not really a way to cooperatively be the best civilization unless maybe you all work together as one group. Now, this game is going back to Kickstarter. It's going back for another expansion. What's in that expansion? Only time will tell. Keep your eyes out for it. You might get a co-op variant. I'm not sure. The other thing in this game I wasn't a fan of was the solo component is there, but it had a tendency to be easy. If you didn't play at the highest difficulty, it wasn't a very big challenge. Now, of course, you could still lose. The cards are always going to fall certain ways, and of course, it's a dice game, so dice are always going to come against you. But I always found a way to hopefully be able to manipulate the way I was playing to be able to beat the AI. So in the third Kickstarter, they're probably coming out with even another solo variant that could add even a more difficult challenge, which will make this game absolutely fantastic. So if you're looking for a post-apocalyptic board game, this is the one. This is the best one on the market in my opinion. That is Fallen Lands, a post-apocalyptic board game by Fallen Dominion, coming in at number 7. Coming in at number 6, we have Sword and Sorcery by Ares Games. This is a dungeon crawler where your characters have been brought back to life. You were once valiant heroes, but had long been dead. So we have been resurrected to fight back the evil once again. As you play through this adventure, you're going to be regaining your power and become the immortal hero that you once were. This is a campaign adventure that starts you off at the beginning and goes all the way through a giant epic adventure. And during these adventures, you're going to be turning to different parts in what is called the Book of Secrets. So not everything is revealed as the game moves forward. You also place down the entire map, but you're going to hide different tokens and different story moments so that as you move through, you don't know what's coming. It's a really great way to play through an epic dungeon crawl. One thing I really like about this game is this is a co-op game. It is a truly co-op dungeon crawl. Your experience is even co-op. It goes into a pool and you as a group decide who should be leveling up. Of course, you can't out-level your entire group, but at certain times you may feel certain characters need abilities that are going to help in the story. So you might sacrifice leveling your guy up to help out your compatriot. It's a really cool system. And on top of that, if you die during Sword and Sorcery, you're not out. This is a big win. If you play a dungeon crawler and you die, you could be sitting out for a long time. In this one, you're not. You become a ghost and you go back to one of the crystals and be able to become resurrected. Of course, that uses some of the experience that you could have been using to level up some of your characters, but it gets you back into the fight. So I like the fact that you share this experience amongst your party, but also need it to bring people back from the dead. And you're never really out in Sword and Sorcery. Another thing that is really unique about this game is the enemy AI. They all have these large cards that you're just going to go down the list, and they're very well done and represent monsters very differently. The combat is fast-paced, and it's a D12 system with a blue and red die, each having different symbols on them. And depending on the weapons or abilities you use, you're going to be rolling different types of dice and looking for different things on those dice to be able to activate the weapons or defensive powers that you have on your character. Now, of course, the enemies are also going to be rolling dice, and they're going to be looking for the same type of symbols that you are. The third thing that I like about this game is the story itself has not necessarily a linear attitude. When you create your characters, you're going to decide whether you want to play the lawful version of the characters or the chaotic versions of the characters. Of course, some of the characters are neutral, so they can play with either ones. Of course, there is a variant where you can play any alignment with anything. But what does the alignment do? Well, in the story, there's going to be certain points where if you're a chaotic character, you are going to be choosing the chaotic path, which is going to have different ways that a story around you is developing. Now, there are a few things about Sword and Sorcery I really wasn't a fan of. Number one is there's a wealth of characters that you can choose from. But again, this game really kind of needs you to have that healer. Otherwise, it can become really, really hard. And on top of that, a lot of the characters felt very same when you started the adventure. Of course, as you progress and gain more abilities, you can start seeing how the character develops differently from other characters. But during the beginning adventuring parts, I really didn't see that much of a difference in all the different characters, except of course the healer had a healing spell and the wizard had like a fireball spell, but there really wasn't this big difference. A lot of the weapons and the swords all use a lot of the same dice during the beginning, but of course as time went on, you're able to really see the way these characters develop. The other issue I had is when I do play this game co-op, sometimes there are dead turns. What do I mean by a dead turn? Well, it means that say you're a group of 4 and there's 2 enemies. Your healer needs to heal somebody, so they spend an action on healing, but they also get 1 to hit and they take out an enemy. So then now we want to also get 2 squares ahead of us. So our thief is kind of faster than the rest. So they attack the other enemy and move the 3 squares that we need to go. Now there's no enemies, and our last 2 characters are really sitting on dead turns. They move up 2 spaces and that's their turn. And I found that my friends and I were kind of getting a little lost in these dead turns that happened every once in a while. And the final thing that may not appeal to everyone, I didn't really have a problem with this, but I know some of the people I played with did. The story is great. It has a lot of neat twists and turns, but it's kind of has a few moments that are kind of a little out there. What do I mean by that? Well, there's parts in the story that don't really feel like they should fit the actual game of sword and sorcery, or actually fit into a world of fantasy. As you play through the game, you may experience some of these, and it kind of took them a little bit out of the immersion of being in the world of sword and sorcery. For me, I didn't mind the pop culture and movie references that this game has in its story in certain spots. So that's Sword and Sorcery by Ares Games, a fantastic dungeon crawler, coming in at number 6. Coming in at number 5 is Nemesis by Awakened Realms. This is a sci-fi survival game where you're going to take the role of crew members aboard the Nemesis, who have woke up from hypersleep only to find that intruders are on board. So your mission is to see that this ship is set to go to Earth, make sure that the engines are repaired, all the while trying to avoid these intruders that are so powerful and tough that they could take you down in a moment's notice. Each character has their own miniature and also a deck of cards that they're going to use for their actions, and each character plays a little different. There's usually a base 5 cards that everybody has, but the other 5 are going to be unique to the character that you choose. Also, this game has an awesome noise mechanic. So as you're moving around the ship, you're going to be creating noise, putting down these tokens, and if at any time you have 2 tokens in any place, an intruder appears and you never know which one it is because they're all pulled from a bag. Each turn is going to consist of you doing different actions and exploring the ship, trying to fix it and getting it to Earth, while all the while the intruders are developing through a token bag system where depending on what token you pull, you could be rolling for more noise or developing smaller intruders to become more powerful intruders that you may face somewhere down the line if your character is that unlucky. There are so many good things about this game. Number 1 is the fact that this game can be played both solo, co-op, campaign, or even semi-co-op. There's 4 different ways you could play this game, and I've played all 4 ways, and every one of them was a blast. The campaign is a 4-mission campaign. The solo has extra cards in it where you're picking only solo objectives. There's also only co-op objectives, and then of course there's the semi-co-op objectives. Each game plays totally different, but the core rules remain the same. Also, there are 2 sides to the board. And the game is fully modular. Each time you play it, you're going to place down the rooms not knowing where they are. And you're also going to put tokens on them and not know what type of tokens there are. It could be, you could be slimed, you could have no noise, you could have lots of noise. There could be a fire in the room. You never know what's going to be on the Nemesis. Another thing I enjoy in this game is the combat. It's very simplistic. It's a D6 system. You roll a D6, you see if you hit the intruder. Now the thing that makes it unique is when you do hit the intruder with a weapon, you draw an intruder card and have to consult the number in the top. If that number is equal to or more than the amount of damage you've done to the intruder, it is dead. But after that number is resolved, you discard the card, and if you attack again, you draw a different card, which could have a different number. So I really love this fact that you never know where the kill shot is going to hit. It could be after you do 3 damage, it could take you 6 damage, but you never know until you draw the card if you've actually killed that intruder. So each shot you do is very stressful and very dramatic. Not to mention the resources can be kind of limited, so you really need to know if that is the type of shot you want to make, or should you run from this intruder. Of course, we can't talk about Nemesis unless we talk about the theme. The theme is amazing. Again, we're going into another Aliens type universe, and I love this universe. I can't get enough of it, and this game just amplifies it so much more. It really feels like you're in one of those sci-fi horror movies where you're just trying to survive and get off that ship. It's just fantastic. Not to mention the difficulty in this game is really good. This game keeps you on the edge of your seat and is challenging in every aspect. Either you're playing solo, co-op campaign, or semi-co-op, it's a challenge no matter which way you play. Now, of course, talking about the campaign brings up one of my biggest regrets. It's not long enough. It's only 4 missions. I know this game is not built to be a giant campaign, but it would have been cool to have a really epic campaign around this theme. Now, the other thing that really makes me sad is there are 2 campaigns, and the second one is not co-op at all, and that is a huge letdown for somebody that's looking to play a giant campaign inside this world. Another drawback is the combat. I love it. I absolutely adore this combat system, but not everybody does. There are a few out there that I've talked to that are not a fan of this combat system, where you don't know where that kill shot is. They want to know that that guy has 3 health, they hit him 3 times, he's done. But the not knowing is what adds the suspense and tension to this game. So if you're looking for a great sci-fi survival tension game, this is the one for you. It's by Awakened Realms. It's Nemesis at number 5. The Seventh Continent comes in at number 4. This game is by Serious Pulp. It's an adventure game where you're a person that has come to the Seventh Continent and has left, but has been cursed, and you need to go back to the Seventh Continent to try to relieve yourself of this curse. This game is going to let you explore this entire huge open area, and you have a deck of cards that is going to not only have cards that help you through the adventure, but also are going to be your life force. And as you slowly move through this deck, it's going to go into a discard pile. And if you ever get to a point where you don't have any cards left to pull from your action deck and you have to pull from the discard pile and you pull a curse, that's the end of the game. The continent has beat you. The base box comes with a lot of different curses, and there is an expansion called What Comes Up Must Come Down that adds even more expansions. And also, you can travel in a hot air balloon or a raft. So there are many different ways to traverse the continent. And each curse potentially starts you in new areas. So you're able to start off in different places and explore this continent from different angles. And during your adventures, you're going to be crafting different items from that action deck, and also things you may find around the continent. Because as you explore, you're going to unlock dangers, but you're also going to be able to unlock things that can help you as well. Now, there's a few awesome things about this game. One, it's just awesome to explore this continent. It's absolutely huge. I've never experienced the whole continent, but just the idea of having this giant world in front of you to be able to explore, and every card has different things that you can explore on the card. And sometimes you may, and sometimes you may not want to, because of course that action deck is slowly depleting for every action you take on the continent. Another thing I like is the way that this discard draw deck play together. So as you're drawing cards, these are also going to be your successes for all the different tests you have to take on the continent. For example, if you have to cross a ravine, you're going to have to pull cards from the action deck, and you're going to be looking for stars that are going to equal successes. Of course, every card is a little bit different. Some might have half stars, some might have multiple stars, and some may have what's a 7. And that only activates in certain situations. Now, before you draw the cards, you have to decide how many you're going to take. And then if you succeed, you cross the ravine. If you don't, something may happen. The amount of cards that you choose to draw is going to be important, because as you draw cards from your draw deck, you're going to be slowly removing them from your life total, in essence, and going into that discard deck where you may end up losing because you don't have any cards to draw from. Another thing that makes this game really unique is the crafting system. You can create different things, and they all branch together and are going to give you certain bonuses to all the different actions you have. You could create a club axe net if you want to. That's going to help you in hunting, but you could also create a bag flute raft that may not exactly all work together, but could help in certain situations, like for trying to get across a river or having to hold more equipment, but that's all one item. So this crafting system is really unique in this game. Now, the seventh continent might not have a few things that people aren't interested in. One is that lack of guidance. You're going to get a card that tells you a little bit about how to solve your curse. But then after that, it's really up to you to explore all the areas to try to figure out how to solve this curse with very little guidance. Only bits and pieces will be revealed through the continent. That's only if you go the right way. If you go the wrong way, you could be spending another hour trying to get back on track, and sometimes this can be a little frustrating. Also, this game has a fantastic save system, but even though you can save the game really fast, to reset it up, you have to take time outside the game to put all these cards that you've used from the past back into the box, because you may re-look for these cards as you play through it when you set the game back up. So just because there's a couple of bad things, this game is a phenomenal adventure game. It's the best on the market. Serious Pulp has hit a home run when it comes to an adventure game. The Seventh Continent is amazing. At the time of this recording, they don't have any copies because it was a Kickstarter exclusive, but you're in luck because they have now a kind of a mini box that has a few of the curses from the actual Kickstarter built into it, and you can pick this up on their website. So I strongly recommend checking out the Seventh Continent. I've done 2 playthroughs of it because I love it that much, and it comes in at number 4 on my top 10 list. We're now entering the top 3, and any one of these could be number 1. They're all fantastic games, but at number 3, we do have Kingdom Death Monster by Adam Poots. This game is a boutique survival horror adventure, settlement building, you name it, it's got it all. It's amazing how many things that this game can be integrated into and how many different categories it can span. You start by waking up in a world that you know nothing about, having to fight for your life with 4 survivors. And that's always going to be the theme of the game. You do have 4 survivors that go out and hunt certain animals to bring back resources to a settlement. This settlement is going to slowly change as different events evolve, and you're also going to be able to innovate things that are going to create a totally different civilization than other people are experiencing. As you evolve, you're going to be crafting new and exciting armor and weapons, and you're going to be facing not only foes to hunt, but foes that come to your civilization to try to crush you as well. And all these different encounters play out completely different and have their own decks of AI and hit locations, so you never really know what is going to be happening as you're fighting each monster. And each year in your civilization is going to bring you closer and closer to understanding the world that is Kingdom Death. There are so many awesome things in this game. There are so many things to like about Kingdom Death Monster. One of the things that I enjoy the most is the fact that the characters in this game are not really the focus of the game. The focus of the game is your settlement. It is the most important. If that loses, you go down. But of course, your characters are growing in power, and losing them can be a very tragic event. But you always have to remember the settlement is what is really keeping you going in this game. Another aspect that really makes this game stand out is the danger that is everywhere in this game, and the fact that you are in an unknown area. You could be flipping a card, rolling a die, and this could change the entire outcome of that entire year that you're playing through. And this unknown makes it that much harder to survive Kingdom Death Monster. Another thing that makes this game stand out is the art and the miniatures. The art is phenomenal. Of course, this game isn't for all ages. It's a very mature rated game. There's a lot of graphic content in this game, but the depictions of the people and the settlements is absolutely phenomenal. The miniatures in this game are totally unique in the fact that you have to assemble them. Most board games don't come with miniatures you have to assemble, but the cool thing about these miniatures is they come with all the different materials that you're going to be able to use to build the survivor that you have. So if you have a certain type of armor and are using certain weapons, you can create that exact survivor to depict that person in your settlement. So it's a really cool system. Also, the monsters are really well done. They're gorgeous and they're easily all put together, and then you have the ability to paint them all to make them look fantastic, and you can create this game to be your Kingdom Death Monster. A few things that might not appeal to everyone is actually the miniatures. Not everybody likes to create miniatures and have to paint them up. They like to just have them ready to go. So that might not be everybody's cup of tea. I really enjoy creating the miniatures and making the survivors that I have. Also, there is a good amount of luck in this game. As I said, you could draw a card or roll a die, and it could change the outcome of your entire adventure for that year. The monsters all come with a hit location deck, so you never know exactly what you're hitting. Also, when you create the monsters, you're going to build an AI deck, and this is going to be a random set of cards based on the difficulty of the monster. So there is quite a bit of luck involved in this, but you can also mitigate it with certain abilities and also certain gear. The other thing that some people may not be a big fan of is you're fighting the same monster quite a bit in this game. You start by fighting a lion, and this lion you may fight a few times to hopefully gain the resources that your civilization needs in order to expand and grow. Now, like I said previously, they're not always going to act the same, and you can also create the monsters to be more powerful. Each monster has a level 1, 2, and 3 version of itself, giving itself not only more health and toughness, but it also gains extra abilities the more powerful the monster is. And of course, that AI deck is going to be built in a different way. You're going to be adding harder cards to try to defeat these monsters. So even though you're fighting the same monster quite a bit, you can create a more difficult version of it. Really, the negatives in this game are far outshined by the positives. This game is absolutely phenomenal. I have not played a game that spans this many type of genres and had this much fun. I strongly recommend giving Kingdom Death Monster a shot if you have a chance. And it finds itself in my top 10 at number 3. The game that's coming in at number 2 is Tainted Grail. It's a newer game on the channel, and it's a fantastic adventure game by Awakened Realms. That's right, Awakened Realms has made 2 games in the top 5, and this is my second favorite game that I have done on the channel. In this game, you are adventurers in the world of King Arthur. You are set out on a quest to obtain the Holy Grail. Well, actually, you're not really the adventurers. You are kind of what's left after the original adventuring party went out. And you're also just sent out to find out what happened to the adventuring party more than you are to actually find the Grail. After all, you're pretty much the city's last hope. So you're going to choose an adventurer that each has a detriment that is attached to the character, which is really the reason they didn't send you on the quest in the first place. And you're going to use your resources to complete the quests that are ahead of you. And each time you complete a quest, it's going to give you a new one. There's 15 quests in the base game, so there's a lot of content that you're going to be able to play through in this game. Each character is built a little bit differently and handles situations that they encounter a little bit differently. Each character has their own deck of cards that are going to be used for combat and a deck for diplomacy. Also, their base stats are going to be different, so they're going to be able to interact with the world in different ways. This game has a very unique combat and diplomacy system. Since there's 2 different decks, when you get into combat, you're going to have to try to defeat a monster using a deck of cards, and you're going to link these cards together to perform actions against this monster, who will also be performing actions against you in between each of your card plays. Diplomacy is done very similar, except it has a little track that you're going to be moving up and down to determine if you're able to successfully get through the diplomacy encounter and gain the rewards that go along with it. There are so many awesome things about this game, but a few of the ones that I really want to touch on are, first off, that whole combat and diplomacy system is fantastic. There's like a whole triple leveling system. As you go through the game, you're going to gain experience, and you can use it to either level up your combat deck, your diplomacy deck, or you can actually level up your character himself by giving him extra points towards their attributes. And if you even go above the attribute a point allotment, you're going to gain cards that give your guys special bonus abilities. So there's 3 different leveling systems. Which one do you want to do? It's going to be up to you how you want to flesh out your character and take them through this adventure. The next thing I enjoy about this game is this seamless adventuring. Basically, you start in one area and you have a quest, and your goal is to complete this quest. And they do a very good job of at least pointing you in the direction that you should be going so that you can not have to be spending all this time just wandering aimlessly. You're able to focus on the quest, but of course they do have these side quests built in too that make the game really unique, and it also fleshes out this fantastic world that they have developed. As you go through the quest, it's going to tell you to go to certain places and investigate these places. And you're going to go to these storybooks and have these storybook interactions. And even inside the storybook, there's hidden areas that you're going to explore by putting down coins in the actual book to point you to different sections of the book that are going to drive the story in a certain direction. And as you're adventuring, you're going to finally complete the quest for, let's say, chapter 1. And as you complete that quest, the second one just instantly starts up. The board remains the same, and it just continues to grow and expand, but it only can expand past the light of these certain menhirs. They're only going to be active for a certain amount of time, and unless you reactivate them, you're going to lose areas of the map. Of course, you can bring them back by relighting them, but this is how the game is able to keep its table space not as big and huge as most dungeon crawler or epic adventure type games. So I really do like the way the Awakened Realms has created this seamless, huge adventure that kind of never stops until it gets to the end, but you can always save it whenever you want by using their simple save sheets. And to continue on with what is really good about Tainted Grail, we have to talk about the theme and the miniatures and the art. It is all fantastic. It really helps immerse you in this world, and the story that goes along with it is fantastic. It's a large storybook, and the excerpts in the storybook aren't super long, so it's really fun to be able to just read these short areas of the book, but it still fleshes out the world, and you're going to go from point to point deciding what you're going to do inside each area of the map. Having talked about all these great things about the Tainted Grail, there are a few that I should touch on. One of them is the fact that there is a decent amount of bookkeeping that goes along with this game. There is a save sheet, but after you're done, you have to write down all the things that have kind of taken place for you before you clean up the board. I found actually taking a picture of the board actually helps a little bit, because that way I know exactly where everything is. But you all have this piece of paper that is a kind of a save sheet, and you can fill it all in, but then you also want to keep the parts separated inside the box, so it can kind of be a little hard to do multiple quests at the same time, so you always want an idea where everybody was when they actually ended the game. Now, if you ever did want to do multiple quests, you can, it's just I feel a little tough. Also, I've noticed that Tainted Grail throws a lot of information at you, at least going through the prelude, and there can be a chance that you may lose some of what you're actually focusing on. With all these different side quests, you may miss out on where exactly certain things were, and you may have to go to places more than once and try to remember why you were there in the first place. Of course, being at number 2, these must be so insignificant, otherwise it would have been farther down on my list. You're right, they really are not that tough to deal with. Tainted Grail by Awakened Realms has created a fantastic adventure game with multiple leveling systems, an expansive world, and a fantastic story that goes into a really wonderful theme. This is the Tainted Grail, and it's number 2. And here we are at number 1. And if you know anything about me, you know I love dungeon crawlers. You know I love an epic story that spans a huge amount of time. You know I love characters with customization. This hits every mark, and it is Mederma. Mederma came out and it blew my mind. You start with 4 characters, and they're going to go through a over 400-page campaign narrative that they're going to experience. And on the way, you're going to be going through encounters that span many different areas of the world. They have tiles for all of these, and they're fantastic and look gorgeous. The characters themselves are so unique, and each one of them can be made to be exactly who you want them to be. There are hundreds of different abilities that you can get for your characters, and you never have to make the same character twice. Then on top of that, the amount of weapons and items and equipment in this game is astronomical. 2 different players could have a totally different built character between the 2 of them based on how they want to take that character through the story. Of course, as this story develops and you fail a quest, you can fail forward. Huge bonus in my book. If you can fail forward and still continue in the story, that's fantastic, because I sometimes don't like to replay combats because you just happen to roll poorly or you drew a bad card. It's so much more fun that if you fail, you can continue on to see the story. And it will change how the actual characters develop in the story based on how many times you actually fail or succeed at certain checks or encounters. There are so many good things to talk about when it comes to Mederma, but one of the things I really want to touch on is the amount of ways you can play this game. There's a huge 400+ page book for the story itself, but if you don't want to go down that route, they have what are called spark notes, which means you can just get straight into every encounter, so you don't really need to know a lot about the narrative. You can just go ahead and fight. They have a crawl mode where you're able to experience all the ways these characters can level up and gain abilities, but you're doing it through a smaller, more dungeon crawlery type book. So if you don't want this huge narrative that spans all these characters, you can just go through this crawl book. Also, you can try other characters, not just the 4 base characters, in this crawl mode if you decide. And of course, if you don't want to read, they have an app that has the entire story narrated, so you can just listen to it in your car on your way to work or before the game actually starts, and everybody knows where they are when the actual encounter comes. Another thing that makes Mederma stand out is its AI on its enemies. Each one of them feels completely different, and they're very easily understandable, and you're able to make these monsters become the kind of monster that they are and able to fight against you with relative ease. On top of that, the combat system is fantastic. It's a growing D6 system. What do I mean by a growing D6 system? That's a great question. It means that you're going to start with certain colored dice that are going to have certain numbers on them, but as you gain better equipment and better skills, you're going to be able to roll roll better D6 dice that have higher numbers on them. Also, there's symbols that correlate with some of the items and weapons, and you're going to be able to gain extra bonuses if those pop up on the dice. And each one of your items may even interact with each other. There's so much going on in the combat system that's so much fun to just see all this stuff come together and have this absolutely fantastic battle. Now, of course, with all this going on and the D6 system itself, there's some people that aren't a big fan of it. There's just way too much going on, and the D6s can sometimes be a little swingy. After all, they are dice, and sometimes the dice are going to fail you. And if that's the case and you're playing 4 players, one person may be out for a little while, and that's just kind of how it's going to be. Of course, the cool thing is you can fail forward, so if things do go poorly, you're still going to be able to continue on with the story. And when talking about Mederma, we do have to talk about the art. It's phenomenal. The miniatures are gorgeous, even up to these huge giant boss type creatures that are going to be on the board. They look absolutely stunning. Now, the art system is a very JRPG, almost anime type style, and I love it. Of course, it's not going to be for everyone. It doesn't have like a dark fantasy theme. It's a very uplifting, bright game. So if that's something that doesn't appeal to you, this might not be the one for you. A giant narrative with characters that you're going to truly care about as you play through this game, and an absolutely fantastic combat system and an art style that is phenomenal. And that's why Mederma by Succubus Publishing is going to take the #1 spot on my top 10 list. So there you have it. Those are my 10 favorite games that I've filmed on my channel. Now, of course, there are other games that haven't actually made the list because I haven't gotten to them. There's so many games back here that I haven't actually had a chance to film, but who knows, some of those might have made the list. Also, there are future Kickstarters coming that I'm really excited for that may make the list in the future as well. Stuff like Oathsworn or Dawn of Madness. These are games that I'm excited to get my hands on. So now what we're going to do is, moving forward, I'm probably going to create another video like this sometime near the end of the year, and we'll see if any of these games stayed on that list or if they were bumped by some of the new product. And if you're excited to see what comes next, then I need you to meet me at the co-op shop.